All right, the time is 6:51 Central. It is Monday, the 16th of June, 2025. This is Billy Krohn at the Merriam Community Center, getting ready to go in for a special council meeting, a special treat this month. The third Monday of the month. Usually it's just second and fourth, but they're doing a special one today to talk about adding more taxes to the city and taking out more debt. So I couldn't miss this.
I didn't get to see him.
Oh, yeah, it's probably out of breath from bicycling up here. Oh my goodness. I'll get the hang of this soon enough. I think I was asking how much time I have before the meeting starts. Howdy.
8 minutes.
I take minutes and I take video.
Yeah, the time up there.
Nice to meet you.
I'm Anna.
Anna, nice to meet you. I'm Billy Krohn.
Selena.
Selena, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. You're in,
Buddy.
okay.
Bicycle up here.
She wanted to walk up here. We live across the street.
Oh yeah?
Yeah,
I
it
think
was,
Easy
we
moving
look
then.
like you.
she said it was too hot. I thought, oh,
Yeah, it is kind of hot.
it is? Oh, okay.
Name tag in the past. I think I was there. We've got cards. My name's Billy Krohn. I'm a city busybody of sorts. For the last 10 years, I've been to all. Yeah, I've been to the
Just for
Police
Merriam?
Academy. The Citizens Academy.
Yeah, so have I.
It's fun, right? You might say
Oh,
electrifying.
yeah, because then after that I had 2 double homicide. I lived in mine. And then I was a sheriff's deputy for 3.5 years in mine.
Well, thank you for your service.
Oh, sure thing.
This year I am running for mayor of Merriam. I've been sitting in the back here for the last 10 years, going to every meeting. And I think maybe I can do some good in the chair up there.
Okay.
Gotten to know all the city folks, a lot of the neighbors.
Well, where were you Friday night then?
Or was that Friday night? What are you referring to? That Friday Fun Day? In the park? I was there.
You were there?
Yeah, I was the candy man. Just giving out bags of candy to kids.
Okay, I don't remember anything.
And a boring political service. Yeah, I had a Merriam bag. Well, it's on that camera. Otherwise, I'd show you. Actually, it might be on. Well, it's on Facebook now.
And were you in the zip thing they had on Channel 4?
Well, I tried to get equal time zip trip, and they denied it, just like our city admin denied people access to contact with
They
neighbors.
asked me to hear, you know, Jan?
Jen again, yes, she's a
She
public
asked,
relations.
she called me at home and asked me if I wanted to be on
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
for the zip thing, and I said no.
Well, that's a shame,
Yeah.
because she knows I would have loved to be in there.
Well, you could have took me. I
The city's
talking
good.
about Merriam, so I come here for meetings. Been here for community for 10 years, and it's only the 6 months that I lived in Merriam, because I moved to the train station. She's been, what she did, she took my picture and she interviewed me. She says, I'll have you in the museum.
Yeah, the e-Merriam probably, and the newsletter. That's very cool. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Yeah, I came close to parking my bike like in the background of the Foxport thing. I should have done that.
Yeah.
I've got campaign signs on my bike.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
And a lot of people park their bikes up close to the door like that. But I parked in the official location, which was not on camera. So, opportunity missed, I guess.
Oh, I didn't go to her.
Was it a zip trip thing? No. Yeah, they had a lot of different businesses that they interviewed. It's pretty cool. Yeah, I go to a lot of the city events. I've been doing it for years. Even through COVID, I went to the city council meetings.
You look pretty young, like
Yeah.
35.
Well, thank you.
35.
39. Grades right here.
My son is 39.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A few gray whiskers going in.
I'm finally trying to get in there.
I'm 39. I guess I'm trying to make myself a lot older. If I get that position, it'll take some years off.
Yeah, well, that's good.
And the mayor now, he's been 6 years.
He's been mayor for almost 4 years now.
4 years.
Before that, he was on council.
Okay.
I actually knocked on doors to support him in his council campaign. But in the last 4, I've just seen a lot of changes I didn't like. Not just in him, but in the city itself, increased
See, and I
traffic.
think that I like, that's why I moved here. I like the changes that, you know, starting with, because we used to play bingo at the old school building.
Yeah.
And then they built the new community center here, so we started playing bingo there. Then they built the library, you know?
Yeah.
And they built the apartment, and, okay, I see it, you know, up and coming, a city, I'm gonna move here.
Yeah. You know how much tax money they took? The apartments?
No, I don't know.
Over 40 million. And they washed 150 million of sales tax out. Our council and our mayor gave them extraordinary deals. Those apartments that are a private business were largely paid for by tax dollars. They kind of bothered.
They're $100 rent.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, the city's not seeing any of that rent. And they have tax abatement agreements as well. They got both two perks to build that. I won't deny that it looks pretty.
Yeah. Well,
They're working on it. That's what they're talking about tonight, the CID district.
yeah.
I'm all for the new apartments. I just don't think that a new CID.
The apartments.
The new apartments are gonna be just over that way.
Where the old
Outside the
library
city.
used to be, because there's a grocery store there, and then the,
And there, tonight, we're gonna be a hearing to consider the redevelopment area project plan and establish a CID, which is a new sales tax in Merriam, in order to finance this grocery store and apartments and the restaurant. I don't think we need no sales taxes, frankly. Nope.
slowly learn all of that.
Yeah, it's got a very big budget. It's up by about $1.5 million a year. Sorry, the more eventually, so my backdrop. Down Commissioner Control.
I sure just want her to kind of get some insight on this part of it, so when it comes to us, I'll have a better idea.
That's good.
But to say yea or nay,
Mm-hmm.
got a lot of stuff for her.
Projected dividend is based on my desires of funding. But the earnings peaking, I think it's not, you know, consider funding, that is one of aesthetics. I really object. Stand up there and say it. Why are we all so quiet?
We'll go ahead and call tonight's special meeting to order and we'll pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
For which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Pate,
Here.
Councilmember Shavetta. Here. Councilmember Kozmeyer,
Here.
Councilmember Hamms. Here. Councilmember Caldwell,
Here.
Councilmember Leahy,
Here.
Councilmember Ryder. Here. Councilmember Silvers,
Here.
Councilmember Yelridge. Here.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now, because this is a special meeting this evening, we will only discuss items that are on the agenda. This evening, we will hold 2 public hearings followed by the associated agenda items. Because all items on the agenda are related, staff will conduct a presentation prior to the public hearings. We will then hold both public hearings, and then we will vote on the agenda items. As required by the state statute, each public hearing is It's individual, and there will be public comment on each one. Public comments will be limited to 5 minutes, according to governing body rules and procedures. The city reserves the right to refuse public comments that are personal, pertinent, or slanderous. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Eagle and his team, or the developer. I'll let you kick it off, Mr. Eagle.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. It's very exciting to be here at this special meeting this evening to share with you the Merriam Grand Station Marketplace project that many people have been involved in trying to get to this point tonight for consideration before the council. Before I jump into that, I do want to do some thank yous, just because there have been so many people that have been involved in it. I want to thank Jeff White with Columbia Capital Management for really kind of being my right-hand man on most of this at the staff level. James Lowry and Kutek Rock has been a great help as the city's bond counsel. I'd be remiss if I don't mention the contributions of Joe Serrano, who really started to tee this project off as a member of the team before his untimely passing at the end of last year, and Ryan Dank with MVP, the city's city attorney. From a legal standpoint, these four folks, including Joe, have really been a great asset to the city to make sure that we cover all of our bases, that we understand what it is that we're doing, what we're getting into with the legal obligations and ramifications of some of these potential decisions are. So I want to thank them. I also want to thank staff member, Community Development Director Brian Dyer, who's been at the staff level invaluable to helping navigate not only these agreements, but the planning and zoning. As you can imagine, there's the agreement part of it, there's the legal part of it, and then there's actually, let's get this stuff up and out of the ground. And then Caitlin Gard, the assistant, who's really helped, the assistant city administrator, who's really helped me kind of keep all this in perspective and make sure that all these things make sense. You sometimes get in the echo chamber of these things when you've been working on them for a long time. And so it's good to make sure that there's somebody that can ground you in what we believe that is the right thing for our community based on what we're hearing from our residents and what you as council members hear from your residents. So I also want to thank, well, they're going to be up here in a minute, Drake Development, who has the whole team here, but specifically Matt Pennington for bringing this fantastic opportunity to our community. As those of you know, Matt and the Drake team are working on Merriam Grand Station to the south of this project. Almost done, a year and a half early almost. Also thank Ian Mussman and Dave Olson from that team also. They've been valuable to helping us try to assemble this package to get before our council tonight. And then lastly, you, the council, we've had many conversations about what we'd like to see in our community, our residents through master planning and things like that. What are the things that they want, answering surveys? But it's you that have provided the great guidance to staff in terms of nudging us in the direction that we think is best for our community. So I want to thank you for that. As the mayor said, not to repeat it, but to repeat it, we're going to run things a little bit differently. This is a different meeting. We don't have individual items. We really have 13 votes. 13 votes, that's crazy, but they're all related. And so in order for any one vote to truly be understood, we think all of the topical information needs to be shared at once. So we'll be running through all of that information. So I'm going to kick this off with just kind of a background and agenda overview. Bear with us here for a second. There we go. So the agenda for the evening, planning and zoning will be after I give a little bit of a background. So Brian Dyer, Community Development Director, will get up and give planning and zoning background on preliminary development plan, rezoning, and plat. The applicant, Matt Pennington with Drake Development, will get up and make a presentation. At the conclusion of that, Brian will return and give a TIF project plan area O presentation. That is the topic of the first public hearing. However, that is not where that public hearing will occur, but that will be where he covers the topical information for that public hearing. Next, I'll return to the podium to give an update or a report on the public-private partnership, which will include the redevelopment agreement and the exhibits, which we call the controlling documents. At the conclusion of that, we'll bring up Jeff White with Columbia Capital. He'll talk about the issuance of bonds. And then I will return for the Community Improvement District presentation. That is the second topic of the second public hearing that we will have. At the conclusion of that, we'll do wrap-up questions before the public hearing. Council will get the opportunity to ask staff, consultants, applicant, any questions that you may have to clarify the issues before you this evening. And at the conclusion of that, we will open up the public hearing. We will take comment from the public. We will close that first public hearing. We will open the second one, take comment from the public, close that one, give the council the opportunity to ask their final questions of staff, applicant, or consultants, and then we'll roll the votes. Again, we have 13 of them, so we will cast those up on the screen so everybody can keep score where we're at in the process. Any questions before I move on to some background information about the order of business this evening? Okay, let's jump into it. Good. In terms of background information, the property that we're talking about, northwest corner of Shawnee Mission Parkway in Antioch, we can see I-35 to the left of the picture, which is the west, north is up. It is bounded on the west side by IKEA Way, on the north by 62nd Terrace, on the east by Antioch, and on the south, Shawnee Mission Parkway. You can see it's immediately to the north of Merriam Grand Station development. We closed up 6.25 acres. It's divided by Slater. You're gonna hear us talk about West Block tonight. You're gonna hear us talk about East Block tonight. The West Block is the residential and the Chipotle ultimately, if we move forward, and that's gonna be Drake owned. The East Block will be city owned, and that will contain 12,500 square foot of grocery as well as 4,000 square foot of restaurant and or retail. Hit that mouse. Again, this is not something, this is not a development that just popped up out of thin air. This is something that we've been talking about for well over 10 years. For those that have been around, if you will recall, in 2013, we had a public process that we called the Shawnee Mission Parkway Corridor Study. At that point in time, we had Kmart was still there, the gas station, library, all of those things. This was a public process. We brought in stakeholders from the business community, from our residents, and we talked about what is their vision for that corridor. It included, again, both the subject areas that we're here to talk about tonight, the Kmart property and the US Bank property that is still there and operating as US Bank on the northeast corner of the intersection of Shawnee Mission Parkway and Antioch. Basically what that study did is that study produced a variety of intensity of uses for these properties, being from, hey, let's just redo the Kmart, let's just kind of shine up what's there, versus let's tear it down and really do some really cool and groovy things. Right? So at the conclusion of that process, I believe there was about 5 or 6 different scenarios, 5 scenarios that were possible at that location there. The council at that point in time approved them and adopted them into, at the time, current Comp Plan 2020. That is our comprehensive land use plan for the things that we would like to potentially see, or at least we should maybe steer or nudge things towards as we move into the future. Again, we went through another public process in 2020 to adopt our 2040 plan. That is the same idea as the 2020 plan, but for the next 20 years. This was also adopted into that plan. So this is all, that's several public processes. This is not something that just came out of the air recently. This is something that we've known for a long time. It has steered our conversations with the library. It's how the library ended up on our community center site. And it's why it's why we're here today, is ultimately to try to accomplish some of the things that we believe our residents still want. Speaking of things our residents still want, it's important also to keep in mind that we don't just make these deals up out of the blue. A lot of things that the city staff and the council endeavor to achieve for our community, we ask questions of our residents. We do surveys. We ask the folks that live in our community, what would they like to see? This is in May of 2024. This is our last survey that we sent out. We send a survey out every 3 years and receive feedback. Kind of at the end of it, we ask these more personalized questions as opposed to just service level questions. In May of 2024, we asked 5 particular priority type questions in terms of level of agreement. Top one, I apologize if I can't read this, but this is verbatim, this is from the survey. Merriam should continue to support a public art program. Merriam should continue to allow open burning of yard waste. The city recently completed a comp plan and we should redevelop downtown for brevity. Merriam should implement citywide contract to provide trash recycling services. Merriam should try to bring a grocery store to town, even if it requires giving the store a multi-million-dollar public incentive package. Pretty clear on what we were asking there. Then we asked in the next question, please rank in priority order the following initiatives: incentivizing the grocery store, single hauler trash service, public art program, revitalizing downtown, continuing to allow open burning of yard waste and leaves. We received the results back. You can see that all of these strongly agree or agree. The bottom one down there, I'm not gonna read the other ones. Merriam should try to bring a grocery store to town, even if it requires giving the store a multi-million-dollar public incentive package. 58% strongly agree or agree. 19% were neutral. I look at that and say, if we could just pull half of those neutrals, you have 2/3 of your residents that say this is something they agree with that statement. I also think it's interesting when we look at the next page and we look at the priorities, it was the #1 priority. When we asked them to prioritize those goals, 35% and 17% for 52% said it was the highest or second highest priority of those goals. I also think that it's worth mentioning that incentivizing a grocery store, we're working on tonight. Single trash hauler, check. Revitalizing downtown, working on it. Continue to allow open burning, we still do that. Public art program, we got it in the 5-year plan, and we've got our first piece of art that we approved a couple weeks ago. Check, 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 and check. I think it's important that, that if we ask the question, it should provide some direction. Be careful what you ask for, because these are the things that apparently our residents want. And I think it's important that if we're not doing what our residents tell us they want us to do, then what are we doing, right? So that's what we're doing. I want to talk a little bit about the city timeline before I start to transition and turn it over to Brian. Again, we've had many public conversations at the city council level. This started in December of 2024, when the city council approved the purchase of the Antioch libraries. At that point in time, we pretty much intimated that we were looking to develop those properties. In January, we issued 2 resolutions of intent to debt finance property acquisition and the utility project. That at those times, we said we are intending to cash finance these 2 expensive purchases. However, we wanted to reserve the right that if something came along and we could issue debt for it, and it made sense in part of a bigger project, we would reserve the right to do so, which we were able to do in January. February, we had a resolution setting public hearing for the end of March to expand the I-35 redevelopment district, TIF district. On the 31st of March, we had that public hearing, and we approved an ordinance expanding the district. April, we had a resolution setting tonight's public hearing for the project plan project plan. We also approved a funding agreement with Drake, acknowledging that incentives were being requested. In May, we had a resolution setting tonight as the public hearing for establishing a CID, and we made it very clear that the CID was to the benefit of the city to pay for this potential project. Also, then in June, we passed an ordinance adopting home rule that related to the issuance of GEO-bonds, giving us the authority, should we choose to move forward with this project, to issue debt to pledge towards this project. So tonight, here we are. We're here for project consideration. We are excited to share all these things for you. This is normally where I reference all of the plates are spinning. We talk about them spinning at different speeds because we have to bring all these things together on one night. You've got statutory requirements in terms of when things have to happen relative to other things. So we really do spin all of these plates at a different speed. Tonight is the night that we hear them hum or we hear them crash, but tonight is that night. So that being said, I am happy to answer any questions you may have about tonight's agenda or any of the background information before I turn it over to Brian to share with you some planning and zoning.
Questions for Mr. Hager?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Gardner, come to the podium.
Mayor, council member, Brian Dyer, community development director. You can see I brought my water, so it means that I'm gonna be up here for a few minutes, so I apologize for that. But again, as Mr. Engel mentioned, this is a very exciting project. Coming from the receiving staff is certainly very excited to present it to you. So I will be covering, as Mr. Engel mentioned, the planning and zoning part of it, then Greg will go through their presentation. And I'll be back up here for project planning. So a little bit about planning commission timeline. Back in April of this year, the planning commission approved a finding, project plan O, again, which we'll cover here in just a second. is consistent with the intent of your comprehensive plan. Also, at that same night, after the meeting, Planning Commission held a public work session to go through the development plan that you're all about to see. And then on May 7th, the Planning Commission held the public hearing. Looks like you all have held a public hearing for a couple of different items, but the Planning Commission is where you all have your public hearing for zoning and development plans items such as this. The comments that the Planning Commission received are in the, reflected in the Planning Commission minutes, which are also part of your packet for this evening. So again, zooming into the area, covered it already a number of times, but this is an area bounded by West 62nd Terrace on the north, Antioch Road on the east, Mission Parkway on the south, IKEA Way to the west. It does not include the Chipotle property. So the request came from Drake Development. The request is for a rezoning of planning and development in general, and also an associated preliminary development plan as well as a plat. Also important to note that if this development plan is approved and goes forward, everything within that red area will be gone and will be redeveloped to for a new purpose. And as Mr. Engel also mentioned, and I will also mention that Drake is currently in the process of finishing up the redevelopment on the south side of the Kmart project, and certainly from community development aspect and standpoint, they've done a fine job and been a very good partner to work with. So existing conditions that are occurring within the area currently right now. What you see up on the screen is the zoning of it. The blue is planning development general that covers the Shell station as well as the vacant library lot that is now owned by the city. Interestingly enough, that lot was rezoned to planning development general to allow for off-site vehicle storage for a dealership that is long gone. So that is still remnant up there. The remaining areas up there, the darker red is neighborhood commercial, and then the lighter red that is over the library building that's recently been demoed. That is commercial office. So of these buildings in here, the Shell station, it's Caribou and Possibilities are currently occupied. Drake Development, to their credit, is working with Possibilities to move into a new site here within Merriam over Madison, just behind Russell Stover's. And then this office building here, that is currently vacant, as well as obviously the two library buildings are also currently vacant. It's important to note, this is probably a really good slide to see it. May not realize it or notice it, but this area has a very high number of curb cuts on the public streets. There's 14 curb cuts on public streets, as well as use of parking in public right-of-way here and here for private purpose. The proposed development plan will reduce the number of public access points in half, from 14 to 7, so a very positive thing for access management and traffic control. So looking into the surrounding areas, as we look to the east, we'll start there. That is zone planning and development general, has a vacant lot, as well as the U.S. Bank facility. To the south, again, as you mentioned, as we also mentioned, that's Merriam Grand Station, that's also zone planning and development general. It's a mixed use of commercial as well as multifamily. In here is Chipotle, it's in the middle. And then as we go to the west, that's the zone planning and development general with the Parent Mini facility, as well as the cell tower that is located right there on the corner. And as we go to the top, again, a variety of zonings, neighborhood commercial, as well as commercial office, as well as our most dense residential zoning, R5, which is our high-rise zoning. The uses up there include office, we mentioned multifamily, and single-family residential. As Mr. Engel did mention, I think it's a good time also to talk about the Mission Parkway corridor plan that was approved back in 2013. I was part of that plan. I will say that was one of the most positive experiences in planning that I had. It really involved a lot of neighbors, a lot of residents, a lot of Merriam folks, and as well as businesses that came together. It was a very enjoyable experience. And I would mention that former council member Gail Stevens was a big proponent of that plan. And I'm confident that if she was here today, she'd be very excited about what's happened and what is being proposed. And then one other thing about that was very unique about that plan, and still is unique about that plan, you included a significant financial component to it. And that financial component really did say that if the city of Merriam wanted to see significant redevelopment occur in this area, it would require a public-private partnership, much in a fashion that we're going to be ready to discuss this evening. So I point all these things out because this is part of the golden factors. Those are factors you all must consider in your consideration of a rezoning case. I've covered a number of them. The ones I didn't cover are in your staff, planning commission staff report. So moving on to the development plan. Again, as Mr. Engel mentioned, we're really gonna talk tonight, east block, west block. So I will start off with the west block, which is obviously west of Slater Street. What you see here, this is the Chipotle building, but over here, to the west of it is a proposed 212 unit, 4-story multifamily complex with 2 levels of structured parking underneath it. I'll go through the structured parking a little bit more later on. It will provide about 330 parking spaces for the residents. Point that out because that is below the standards that's within your Merriam code. However, it is close, or does meet the standards for the Institute of Transportation Engineers, which is about 1.3 spaces per unit. And also, it's important to note that that is the same level or same ratio of parking that the city council approved for the apartment complexes on the south side. The east block consists of a 4,000 square foot retail restaurant building, could be 1 or 2 businesses, and then a 12,500 square foot also retail space that is being marked as a proposed grocery store. There is 188 parking spaces on that side, which is adequate and meets our standards for parking. Also with this development plan, the applicant, Drake, submitted a traffic impact study. In brief summary, that traffic impact study states that our existing infrastructure can handle the additional traffic at the same level of service that is currently being provided, with the addition of a restriping on Antioch over here to add a dedicated left turn lane past. If we're familiar with that intersection, there is a hard median and then a dedicated left turn lane for northbound Antioch traffic to go westbound on 62nd Terrace. Also important to note that the traffic impact study does state that if the northeast corner of the intersection, i.e. the US Bank property, were to redevelop, it may be likely that the intersection would require for southbound Antioch for a double left turn lanes to go eastbound on Shawnee Mission Parkway. I bring that up because if that were to occur, that northeast corner would be responsible for dedicating additional right of way. Again, it doesn't directly impact this project, but it was something that the traffic impact study did point out. And then finally on traffic, I guess 2 more points again, as I mentioned earlier, great traffic access management going from 14 curb cuts to public streets to 7, which is fantastic. And then also, as you all are aware of, the city currently is undergoing a comprehensive traffic study for this entire corridor of Shawnee Mission Parkway from Antioch to the highway. So we are continually looking at, and currently are looking at improvements to the traffic to better make it flow better through this corridor. And then the final thing on this slide is the pedestrian connectivity. All of the dotted lines on there you see on there, those are sidewalks. So again, you see perimeter sidewalks on there as well as interior sidewalks, so very good pedestrian connectivity. And then this project will also be responsible for constructing a crosswalk across the eastern leg of the Shawnee Mission Parkway, Ikea Way, Evie Avenue intersection. Currently that intersection has crosswalks in the north, west, and south leg, not the eastern leg, but this project will be responsible for adding that. Moving on to the landscape plan. As you can see, extensive amount of landscaping proposed for this. Street trees, interior landscaping, screening of parking, again, a lot more landscaping than we currently see over there, particularly along the street trees. Also important to note that this development plan, compared to current conditions, will reduce the amount of impervious surface by about 6%. Again, that should correlate to a reduction of stormwater runoff. And then also, as a condition of approval for stormwater conditional approval is to install a mechanical debris water separator at the inlets for the interior of this project. Again, for our BMPs, for our best management practice to improve stormwater quality. Run through the elevations of this project. This is the proposed elevations for the 4,000 square foot building. That will be on the east block, as you can see, quite a bit of masonry, EFS. It's being set up with the potential of two businesses being placed in there. Again, not that it's similar to, but not the same as architecture styling, just going on the south side. But again, kind of relates, so you can tell it is a different development. This is the proposed the architectural elevations for the proposed grocer. Up on the top is the north elevation. This is the elevation that faces to the field of parking. And probably just as importantly, or maybe more importantly, this is the southern elevation that faces along Shawnee Mission Parkway. Again, brick, EFS, glazing that will be visible from Shawnee Mission Parkway. There will be two monument signs for the retail portion of it, one at Slater and Shawnee Mission Parkway, and the other one at West 60, at the entrance to the project from West 62nd Terrace. And then finally, the architectural renderings for the apartment complex. Again, high quality exterior materials, brick, EFS, stone, work on the facade, similar to, but not the same as what's going on across the south side. So you can see that they're related, but again, a different development. Couple things I want to point out here. Up here on the top, this is the north elevation. So this is the elevation that faces on the West 62nd Terrace. As I mentioned earlier, two-level parking structure, and they're using the elevation, the natural elevation that occurs over there. I think we're all familiar, Shawnee Mission Parkway sits lower than West 62nd Terrace at this location, because you go up the hill, you go up by Kia Way towards City Hall. So again, as I mentioned, this upper one is facing West 62nd Terrace. So this here is the entrance to the upper level of the parking structure. Again, it's a parking structure, not a garage, so you can't go between levels in the interior of the structure. You can only access the different levels from the exterior. So this is how you get access, how the residents will have access to the upper level. Down below here, this is the east elevation, so this is the elevation that faces, faces Chipotle. As you can see here, this is the portion that faces the island of Shawnee Mission Parkway. They're doing an interesting stair step away from Shawnee Mission Parkway to add a little bit of character and definition to the project. And then the final drawings. So the upper one here is the south elevation, so this faces Shawnee Mission Parkway. Again, quite a bit of fenestration, variety of materials. Here is an infinity pool that will face out over Shawnee Mission Parkway. It's about 25 plus feet above Shawnee Mission Parkway. Some folks have asked if that's going to be a distraction to drivers, only if they're looking really high in the air or in a really tall truck. So it's going to sit quite a bit of ways up above Shawnee Mission Parkway. And then if you go down here, this is the west elevation. So this is the elevation that faces Kia Way, faces Merriam. And as you can see, as you go along here, as you're heading northbound, the elevation changes as Kia Way goes up to 62nd Terrace, which is located here. And here you can see the entrance for the residents for the parking at the lower level garage. You can see how they've used the topography of the area to make the parking structure work. And finally, last part of this presentation, this is the plat. This is the final plat. Again, the west block we plat is one lot. It'll have the apartment structure on it. The east block will have, we platted as two lots. One lot for the 4,000 square foot building and another lot for the 12,500 square foot proposed grocery store. And before I turn it over to Drake, I'll be happy to answer any questions. Are there any questions from Mr. Engel? Oh, thank you, Mr. Lay. Mr. Dyer, Director Dyer. Oh, go ahead, Mr. Goodman.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. That looks really exciting. I've got a question about the parking variance. So does that, in the general estimation of parking needs for an apartment complex at 1.3 spots per unit, does that include like guests, et cetera, in that number?
No, that is, and it's actually, the ratio is a little bit above 1.3, but it does not. It just simply is a ratio. Every unit will have approximately 1.3 parking spaces per unit. So this is a straight ratio. It's keyed onto the unit, not guests or occupancy or anything.
Okay, great.
Mr. Silvers?
I believe in an earlier conversation, there was mention of some charging stations. Can you remind us how many charging stations will be?
I believe it's 18, but I will let others have that, because I think they'd like to talk to you about that. But excellent question. Yes, Bill will cover it.
Another question for the mayor? Okay, Just, who's next?
Let me do a screen change here real quick. And get ready for, Mr. Pennington and Drake. Thank you, Pennington.
Thank you.
Turn it over to Matt.
Thank you, Brian. The council mayor, appreciate you also spending so much time on the project so far and listening to where we're headed today. So, Matt Pennington, president of Drake Development. We've come a long ways, and projects like this, they just don't happen overnight. And I think the best way I always try to explain it is they're minor miracles. And there's so many different pieces that come into these, so many things that can happen when the project doesn't happen or just stalls or just doesn't move forward. This is a classic case of preparation, experience, unbelievable staff, vision from you all on the south side to get us to this point, to be able to be in front of you and say we have one of the best grocery stores in the country. A lot of that basically comes off of just time and effort, and the vision that you all had on the south side has given the confidence for not only the grocery store but for other restaurants to move forward as we are tonight. So as we open it up, I know I'm gonna do as best as I can not to be too duplicative. I'm not gonna get into too much of the financial information. I'm happy to go into it once we get into it on questions, but I'm gonna go over just kind of the nuts and bolts of the transaction, look at this from a high level, and then we can dive in with questions. So the first slide you see there is just what we're proposing to you all. For some of those in the audience that don't know who we are, I know most of you do, and Ruben, I know you were on planning when we came through last time, but we definitely focus on premier generational mixed-use assets, and Merriam Grand Station has certainly turned into that. And I don't think anybody ever would have imagined that when we first set out there on groundbreaking, but it has truly turned into that, a generational premier mixed-use asset. So today we're lucky enough to say we're going to continue that, and we're going to continue that and propose it on the north side, and having that confidence decoy, I guess, on the south side has given us an amazing opportunity tonight. So we're here because we believe in the market, we believe in the vision of the city staff, and we think it's going to be an overwhelming success. Again, for some of the people out in the audience that don't know what we focus on, we focus on some of the most premier tenants in the country. We have a relatively small group. There's 8 to 10 of us at all times working on these projects, but I like to think that we're the best in the business as it relates to each of our crafts that my team is here today, and each of them can speak if we have questions of that manner. But we've done about $1 billion in development. We have $300 million under construction and about $500 million in planning. So we're lucky enough to have the trust of some of the best tenants in the country. So that coupled with experience and good vision from the city is the only way these projects happen. So how do we get here? It really comes down to an assemblage just like the south side with Merriam Grand Station, except this assemblage felt even harder. Sometimes 90-acre projects seem easier than a 6-acre project. And I think this is a great example of that, to where if we wouldn't have had the vision on both sides with the city making sure they protect their front door from what they want on the library piece, and then Drake just spending 3 to 4 years assembling in the hope that something potentially could happen here. And so you have all those pieces thrown up into the air, like Chris said, with the saucers and the plates. and you just hope they don't crash. And, but we have all the right people in place and they haven't. So we're here tonight with a complete package, with a complete offering that we can look you in the face and say, hey, we have a grocery store lease signed. So I think that's important as we move forward, that it's not a speculative deal. We can move forward with projects that are baked. And so if you all feel this is a project that makes merit and makes sense tonight, it's happening. And we can look at you and say that. And so I think that's a rare situation that a lot of developers don't have that luxury. But we have that tonight. So back to the assemblage. Again, I'm gonna do my best to not be too duplicative. But there's 9 different individual parcels that were owned by 6 different ownership groups. It's a lot of personalities. That's a lot of people's thoughts and opinions of what they think their property's worth or what they think their family's gonna keep it in. We were lucky enough to have all of these properties assembled over a 3 or 4 year period. It just didn't happen overnight. But we've taken the time to make sure each of these parties are happy, including the relocation that Mr. Dyer had talked about with possibilities, with them moving over to Maston. So we've kept them in Merriam. And so I think we've tried to just highlight some of the positives that are coming out of it, even though there's relocations, they are staying in Merriam. So Caribou Coffee was something that we started back in 2021 and was able to purchase that property in 2022. The Shell gas station and the property behind that, the Shell gas station, that little office building, those discussions started in 21. So if you look back, I mean, we were having discussions on Merriam Grand Station in 2021. So these all take a lot of time, a lot of effort, and then just the vision of the city to collectively come up with a package that's gonna work for everyone and meet the needs of the community. And so hearing the survey data and hearing all of that just gives us kind of that guidepost to give a project that everybody hopefully is proud of. Brian already kind of presented this. Our project is complex, but it's relatively simple. We've got apartments labeled in the green there, that green dot. You see the Chipotle, which is the red. The restaurant retail building is in the teal blue, and then the grocery store is in the dark blue. So this is the site plan, just kind of in a nutshell, if you just break it down in layman's terms. The pedestrian connectivity we felt was extremely important for this site, just like on the south side. How are people gonna cross Shawnee Mission Parkway? How are people gonna utilize this site, not only by car, but bike? And how is a pedestrian gonna enjoy the use of it? So those things are all been thought about. We've worked with city staff. Everyone's really focused on this, has done a great job of coming up with a product that we believe in, along with the tenant. And we're getting the insight from the tenant as well as we're trying to design these. Here's just kind of an overview of what the project is gonna potentially look like. You can see the apartments there as they stair step back from Shawnee Mission Parkway. We thought that was extremely important, just to the character of the area, so you don't just have a box there on Shawnee Mission Parkway. And then just something unique for the area. Here's just the actual call outs of what it is. We have 250 luxury apartments, Chipotle, the restaurant building, and then the specialty grocery. Here's just a look, looking south. Here's just another look. You can see Merriam Grand Station, and you get a feel of just how it's gonna feel there after we're all done with construction. This is the better look of looking straight at the apartments and how it steps back. Here's another look just from the opposite direction. This is the grocery box that'll be on the actual hard corner there of Antioch and Shawnee Mission Parkway. Another look at that, just looking towards Shawnee Mission Parkway. And then one of the questions I believe you had, Councilman Silvers, was how many charging stations are we gonna have? We are gonna have 18 charging stations inside the parking garage. And then we are setting the buildings up similar to Grand Station with the solar design and in time, the alternate power sources that could be completed. I think important to note on this project that the south side didn't have was this project, the north side, will have an affordability component. And that means that rents will be discounted from market. And so just to give an idea of what the rents are over at Merriam Grand Station, the baseline rent today at Merriam Grand Station is about $1,600 to get it. That's your entry price. Here on the north side, with the affordability requirement, you'll be about $1,200 on the entry level. So it is a significant discount for those looking for an affordable component. And at this point, we're planning 18 of the units to be subject to those affordability requirements. The affordability component will be set forth, which Chris will, Mr. Ink will show in detail what the ramifications are if we do not follow those guidelines. And they are penalizing to us as developers. So obviously, we would do this anyway without a penalty, but I think it just shows the safeguard that the city has put in place to ensure that you're gonna get this affordable component. So what happens if everyone says yes? The schedule is very fast. The grocery store would like to be open as fast as possible, which is great news for all of us if this project makes sense to y'all. The planning commission meeting you all went through, or some of you were here, that was back in May, that's complete, and we did move forward with that. The city council meetings tonight, you can see that. If you're all in favor, if there's an overwhelming majority that's in favor of the project, we would start immediately. We would start a demo on the west block and continue demo on the east block in July. So this isn't, hey, we're gonna sit and wait. This is immediate, non-speculative deal. So then you would ask, well, when's that grocery store gonna open? It would open in late 2026. And at this point, we feel pretty good about those timelines based on schedules, coordination with the tenant, and in coordination with the city and its permits. So we can look at you today and say, hey, this is happening if you feel it's the right project. So again, this is just the project from an overall. I'm gonna let Chris get in there, Chris get into all the details financially. I'm happy to get back and get into the nits and gnats of that. But just for the sake of time, I don't want to be too duplicative as he goes through all this. So thank you, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Mr. Baker? Go ahead, Mr. Lane.
I just want to say thank you for showing the sidewalks. I know we seem to grill you on that all the time, and you've heard and you've listened, and I do appreciate it, and it was noticed.
I appreciate that.
I also want to thank you for including the affordable housing component. I know we had previously discussed that, and I appreciate you working with us on that.
Absolutely.
Any other questions, Mr. Baker? Okay, thank you, sir. Director Dyer coming back up.
Give me a second here for a set change, please. Did not bring my water at this time. Short presentation. So, gonna go over I-35 redevelopment district project plan O. This is your current I-35 redevelopment district. Again, goes along the I-35 corridor from 75th Street up to Johnson Drive. In March 31st, you all approved an amended district plan, and that added in the area that's in the red square on the screen. That's the area that's bounded by West 62nd Terrace, Antioch, Shawnee Mission Parkway, and Slater. And also as part of that amendment, you also created a new project plan. Again, I'll quickly go through kind of, you've heard me say this before, your district plans, redevelopment district plans, are kind of 60,000 foot level view of stuff that's gonna happen in the area. Then within that, you have your project plan areas, and that kind of gets down to the 25 to 20,000 foot level of what could happen in there. And then outside of the district stuff, you have your redevelopment plans, which you've already seen. It really gets down to very much steel on the ground what it's going to look like. So within your redevelopment district, you created a new project plan area, and you can see up on the screen all the project plan areas within our redevelopment district. The new area is project plan area O. It surrounds project plan area N, which is Chipotle. It surrounds it on the north, east, and west sides. So again, zoom in closer. This is going to be a very familiar picture for everybody, but this is what your project plan area O looks like. So your first public hearing is on project plan O and the adoption of project plan O. Those project plans involve maps as well as text. A couple of things I pulled out of the text of the project plan for Area O is first the summary of feasibility study. By state statute, you have to include a feasibility study within the summary of the feasibility study. Again, the summary states that the plan's benefits and TIF revenue and other available revenues are expected to exceed or be sufficient to pay for the project plan's cost. And then the other part, so that's the finance piece, so the actual development piece, project project plan, the project plan states that the development will consist of 1 to 4 commercial retail buildings ranging in size from 1,500 to 2,000 square feet, and parking for commercial buildings and the necessary infrastructure in support of the project plan. So that's kind of the different aspects and the different things that are included within the project plan. So that's my presentation. Again, you will be later having your public hearing on this aspect here. That'll be your first public hearing. So I'll be happy to answer any questions before I turn it back over to Chris.
Questions for Graham? Okay, I see no questions. Thank you, sir. Mr. Angels, come aboard. I did bring my water up here. I might be here for a while, so I apologize for that. But, this is the exciting part. This is the sausage. This is how the deal's made. This is the business deal. There's a lot of pieces that are involved in the business deal, as we call it. There are a lot of connections between issues. As you read through the redevelopment agreement, there are things that loop back around to different sections, so you kind of have to be on the ball as you read in this section, and then this section references another section. So I apologize in advance that I did my best to create some sort of flow through this presentation. Some of this is just fits and spurts that made the most sense to group together. But again, we got a lot of smart people and experienced people in the room that can answer questions about these things. Please don't hesitate to ask, because this is the business deal. This is what outlines the obligations and duties that we have to each other. It includes the incentives. This is truly how we make this development happen. If this redevelopment agreement doesn't make sense or it does not get approved, it's hard stop. We don't go forward from there. So please feel free to ask questions. Again, I will ask at the end, but it's important that we understand all of this information. In addition, it's important that we talk a little bit about the exhibits at the end. There are exhibits at the end of this that we call controlling documents that are going to be between Drake and the city as we move forward if there's an approval tonight. So we are lucky enough that Drake happens to not only construct buildings, but they lease buildings and they manage buildings. And we're gonna need some help with that, because we don't do any of those things on our own. So these controlling documents that are listed as exhibits in the back are substantially complete, but there's just some information that we need going forward if we are to approve this to complete those. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about those so we understand those also. But the first bulk of my presentation is going to be the actual business deal, the redevelopment deal, the RDA as we call it. So we're gonna start with a slide on the budget. This is a project budget. This is, again, what we are pretty conservative, but we have a $102 million budget, where the private portion of that is about $69 million. That would be primarily what we would call the west block, the residential. The east block, the grocery and the restaurant retail, is about $32 million. Again, budget figures. This is what we are moving. We feel good that this budget will encompass all the costs of the project, but until we get to the last second, we get out to bid, we don't really know. But we feel pretty good in terms of going out to the market, testing the market on what these things should cost. This is the redevelopment agreement, just from a summary standpoint, $102 million project budget. I'm sorry, it's just a budget. 69.4 projected developer cost. There's a minimum developer investment required of $66 million. We'll talk about that in a little bit. 19.5 in projected city construction costs, 19.5 million. There's 13.1 city property cost involved in this deal, 6.7 of which will be conveyed to the developer. If you recall, when we have normally in your traditional TIF, or at least a TIF deal that we've done before, we reimburse the developer for the cost of real estate. This is a little bit different. We own some of this real estate already. We're gonna convey it. Some of it we're gonna buy at closing, and we'll talk a little bit about that too. There's two IRBs, which are industrial revenue bonds. These are essentially discounts. One is on Kansas sales tax exemption for construction materials, so it's essentially a tax exemption for any materials bought in Kansas that would go into the development. The city will also benefit from something similar. We don't pay sales tax because we are a governmental entity, so we would also benefit from something similar. It will not be these IRBs though. Then there will be a 10-year property tax abatement on the residential. However, per the terms of the redevelopment agreement, Drake is going to pay $49,500 approximately each year in pilots. That's a payment in lieu of taxes.
That is the approximate 2024 property tax bill for the properties that are there now. What that does effectively is it holds harmless any of the taxing entities that currently receive revenue through property tax. Your county, your state, your community college, your library, all of those. They are going to be kept whole through the duration despite the abatement. And then there's also city fee waiver to the benefit of the developer. This is maxed out at 243, 500, ballpark 579, pretty specific number, but I'm just rounding. This is for city time. This does not include third-party inspection fees. On big projects like this, the city brings in third-party inspectors because we want to make sure that we've got extra sets of eyes, people that have a little bit more capacity than we do, to help us out, make sure that these things are being done to plan and to code. Those things will still be paid by Drake. We are simply waiving the value of our time. So we're already here. So we're, again, similar to the IRBs for sales tax and property. This is really a discount on the value of our own cost of their construction. One of the things that we outline, because we don't exactly know what the costs are, because we won't till we go out to bid, is we've put some hard caps inside of here. I want to draw attention to this one particular one, which is what we call the city site prep maximum amount. So for 5.4, 5.5 just because I'm going to round up, $5.5 million is the maximum amount that the city is responsible in connection with the cost for the demolition and site work on the east block. So that's the whole block, all the surrounding roadways around the site. This also includes the environmental remediation, the demolition and the site work that we've already performed on library parcels. Anybody that's driven by there will see that we're already doing a little bit of work there. We've already incurred some costs. $5.4 million includes those costs. It also includes the cost of the public improvements and pedestrian improvements. So that's pretty much anything sidewalk, circulation in the right of way or that crosses the streets. There's a sanitary sewer main relocation that needs to occur in the west block with a maximum price. Again, we try to cap these things so we can limit the amount of liability we have in terms of these costs at $275,000. And then any other necessary utility or infrastructure related improvements, but not vertical construction. This is the city site prep maximum amount. So again, wanted to make sure that when we looked at this, we understood that we have tried to cap the cost as best we can. With this being in the agreement, Drake effectively is guaranteeing that this is going to be the cost of this work. There is other work. We have a building to build, but we have put where we can caps in here. So I wanted to make sure that we drew attention to that. Required developer investments, we'll talk about these in a couple different places, but required investments on behalf of the developer and the city. Developer is minimum $66 million of their own funds into the west block. Again, the budget was about 69.1, so they're pretty close. They're going to make a $1 million contribution to the construction of the grocery store on our side. That gives them no ownership rights. They're simply contributing $1 million to the grocery construction. They're also going to contribute $500,000 to the restaurant retail, whatever that 4,000 square foot ends up being. The required city investments, that sanitary sewer main relocation of a maximum of $275,000. We're going to do all the surrounding road utility infrastructure improvements. Again, those things are normally TIF eligible. We would do those things. We did those things on the south side. Then we're going to waive city fees, but not your third party fees. Now we're going to talk about the incentives. It's important that we point out that the incentives are going to both the city and the developer. We are both benefiting from incentives as part of this proposed project. It's quite possible in the long term, the city is actually the larger beneficiary of the incentives. So the first incentive is going to be TIF financing. We have the existing I-35 redevelopment district. We are proposing that we expand the timeline on that for 5 years. We add 5 years. It's currently set to expire 12/31/32. We are proposing that we extend that to 12/31/37. For those that have been around, and you might recall, the IKEA deal occurred in December of 12, and we gave the TIF a 20-year horizon. We could, by statutory authority, expand it by 20. We are adding 5 years to that because we need those last 5 years when IKEA pays off to have the revenues to pay off, to serve as the funding mechanism to pay for our portion of That's why we have to add those 5 years. Our intent would be to pay it off as quickly as we could. We will not linger. And we actually, as you will hear from Jeff White with Columbia Capital, we have no prepayment penalty when we get to a certain point in this project. So our full intent is to pay all of this off as quickly as we can. But we need to add language that extends the TIF to 12/31/37. $13.7 million, up to $13.7 million is spelled out in the RDA for TIF to go for the parking structures direct. That is the TIF in the RDA that goes to the developer. That's spread out, gets paid July 1st from 25 to July 1st of 2034. That is only for the parking structure. As you will recall, we recently bought a parking structure. That is how we bought our parking structure at the community center, because that is in the I-35 TIF. So we use economic development dollars to build our own parking structure. The second funding mechanism would be a community improvement district that is proposed tonight. That would 100% benefit the city. Per the terms of the RDA, Drake agrees and already has submitted as the petitioner to the city's benefit for 1% for 22 years. Drake's also guaranteeing the revenues on that. They're guaranteeing $2.5 million in revenues from the CID at 11 years and $5 million at 22 years. What you'll see in there is we have a 11-year and a 22-year true-up, thank you. 11-year and a 22-year true-up. So when we get to the 11-year point, if it has not generated 2.5, Drake's gonna write us a check. When we get to 22 years, if it has not generated $5 million, Drake is going to write us a check, effectively guaranteeing $5 million is generated from that CID. We also have the industrial revenue bonds that we talked about. They will benefit Drake. The sales tax on construction, this is an estimate. We just thought that there might be a question of what the value of that is. This is a projection, but we just wanted you to know that it's not $5,000, it's not $50,000. It potentially has a discount value of a couple $1 million. There's also the 10-year property tax abatement, but the pilots will be paid for the full 10 years at the 2024 values, keeping our taxing partners whole at the 2024 level. And then also there's a requirement that the city issue general obligation bonds that need to be issued by 12/31/25. That is the incentive that we're going to be paying off. That's the bill that we're going to be paying off with the incentives.
Good.
The developer mentioned earlier, there's some affordability requirements. They have at least 18 units. Those are capped at 30% of 60% of the Johnson County median household income for 5 years. So that is the formula that we can hold them accountable for of how we are defining affordable, and that is how affordable is defined. So that will occur for the first 5 years once they're open. There will be annual written certification to the city where they will tell us, they will report on their affordability requirements. That is also auditable by the city. We have the ability to go in and audit that information. And we'll talk about where we might do that or what would happen if we do that a couple slides down the road. There's also the sustainability features that were already mentioned, installation of 18 EV charging stations, residential design for future installation of solar panels. So there's your affordability and sustainability within the West Block area. Next, we also require civic involvement. If we're going to enter into a public-private partnership with a developer, just as we did across the street on the south side, we want them to be involved in our community, not just in our community, but the larger Northeast community, the school district. So we have civic involvement that is required, and the developer has agreed to. So one, we want them to be a dues-paying member of the chamber. They should be involved in the chamber. We want them to be. They are. They actually are the sponsor of our golf tournament every year at the chamber, which is a fantastic event and fundraiser for the chamber. They will also annually, they will do that annually. They will also annually make a $2,000 contribution to the city for the Flags for Freedom event that we have every 4th of July. That will likely go to flag replacement, but it will really be up to the committee. They'll also make a $6,000 contribution to the Recreation Foundation, Community Center Foundation, and that will go for recreation scholarships for folks in our community that need a little bit of help to enjoy our community, make sure that the people in our community can enjoy the amenities that we're bringing to them. They also have pledged to be a headline sponsor of at least one major city event. That will be Turkey Creek or Merriam Drive Live. and that will be annually. They'll also make a $6,000 contribution to the Shawnee Mission Education Foundation, which is a foundation attached to the Shawnee Mission School District that helps at-risk or at-need folks that have students that are within the school district. So again, that's something else that I think is very, very important if you're going to be in a public-private partnership and make sure these folks are really part of our community, which they have been on the south side of the street, so we expect nothing different. And then they will provide $50,000 for art within the project area or elsewhere in the city. That's a one-time art contribution. None of these are TIF eligible. These are actually payments that the developer has to make to the civic involvement. This is not a reimbursement. So then we also have some what we call developer defaults. What are the things that could occur in here? How do we protect ourselves? What are the things that hold each other accountable? We trust each other, but we gotta verify, and we have to have legal agreements just to make sure that people that come after us can make sure these things are being adhered to throughout the term of the agreement. So we've got the minimum developer investment of $66 million. If it's less than that, there's 25% of the difference will be reduced from the TIF. So for example, if their private contribution equals $25 million, we would take that difference, that $1 million, and 25% of that would be taken off of the up to $13.7 million that we're reimbursing them for the garage. So we would reduce what we call the TIF cap. This is to make sure that they're investing, the amount of money that we believe they're gonna spend. If the west block is not fully complete within 5 years of closing, that would be June 24th of 30. For each month of delay, there'll be a $50,000 penalty. That will be a reduction in the TIF cap. If there's non-compliance with the affordability requirements, so they have to self-report every year, as I shared in terms of the affordability requirements for residential. That's a 60-month term. Every month of incompliance, they add 2 years. So if there's a month of incompliance where they're not in compliance with the affordability component, it goes to 62 months that they now have to maintain, and it goes to 64. Tracking the number? If we audit it, because we can audit it, if we are to audit it and we find incompliance that was not reported, we just take $1 million away from that TIF cap. This is really kind of we've got the carrot and the stick, right? So this is to make sure that that's how serious we are about affordability. They would already do it anyway, but you know what? Let's just put it in there and let's make sure that it happens. If the developer fails to comply with the annual EcoDevo reporting requirements, which are requirements of the state based on new legislation that came out of the session, that's a default. We would attempt to cure that. And then we could terminate the RDA, but this RDA is not gonna fall apart over some reporting. If the developer fails to complete the east block, which is our side, that is the grocery and the restaurant retail, in accordance with the construction contracts, we would attempt to cure it, but then we would have the right to cancel the RDA. Important thing is, if there's a default, Drake still has to contribute the $1.5 million to east block construction, $1 million to the grocery, half a million to the restaurant retail. So those would be what would be considered developer defaults. So now talking a little bit about the timeline. These are things that have already occurred. So we would call these pre-closing activities prior to today. From the city's acquired all of the library parcels, all 4 of them. We've conducted environmental remediation, and we've commenced the demo site work. Drake has acquired Caribou. They have the purchase options, which they've purchased those options on Shell, Boulier property, which is the one behind the Shell, the Chipotle, and then Possibilities. And then they have petitioned the city for CID to the sole benefit of the city. Those are what we would call the pre-closing activities prior to today. Should the council proceed with this project, these would be the next level per the redevelopment agreement of pre-closing activities. East block closing, which would be the city side of Slater, that is scheduled for 6/24, so that would be coming up here pretty quick. On or before East block closing, Drake will assign those purchase options to the city for Boulier and Possibilities for the city to purchase. The city will approve form of the grocery lease and a prime subcontract for the grocery construction. The city and Drake would execute a commission agreement and construction contract. Those are those exhibited contracts that we'll talk about here in a couple seconds that are in the back of the RDA. And then the west block closing is currently proposed for July 17th. Drake will receive clearance to redevelop the shell at that point in time. Those would be our pre-closing. The closing activities on closing day, and I'm gonna have a little illustration to show you this because it just makes a little bit more sense. East block closing on the 24th of June, the city's gonna acquire Possibilities and Caribou Coffee. The west block closing on July 17th, Drake's gonna acquire Independence property in Chipotle. I'll spend a second on Independence property. I think it's important, it's in the agreement, it has to be in the agreement, but I think it's a great example of the difficulty of putting together these development deals, because when you don't have control of property, you have to negotiate, you have to horse trade, you have to get people comfortable to work a deal out with you. Part of our agreement is for Drake to buy property in Independence because that's tied to property that he's purchasing in here. So it's part of our redevelopment agreement, but it has nothing to do with the city other than it has to occur at the same time. The city, in addition to Drake purchasing those properties, the city is gonna reimburse Drake $1.5 million for the Chipotle acquisition, again, TIF eligible expense, as it would be normal. Drake's gonna acquire the Shell property. City's gonna reimburse Drake $4.8 million for Shell acquisition, which I'll talk about in a second. That's $3 million for acquisition, and we have to buy their lease out at $1.8 million. And then the city's gonna acquire the Bouillet property. So here's how we're gonna get there. What we have in this illustration is the city owns the green property. Drake currently owns the red property. All the other properties have development deals on them that we need to pull off. So the city already owns the library property on the east block, which is good because that's where we want to construct city-only facilities. We have to buy the Caribou. So we will buy the Caribou at closing, and then we will also buy the Possibilities. Now that's $1.82 million. That's not what it costs to purchase that. We are relocating them within Merriam, as has been mentioned twice, which I think is very important, something we should be proud of. Similar to the Rigdon property downtown, where we can, and it makes sense, we should, and we do relocate businesses within our community. It's not always feasible, but it was feasible here, so it was important to us that we keep them within the community. It comes with a cost, but it frees up this property for us to develop. So this is how we end up with the east block completion. This is east block closing. West block, the city owns those two library properties that are already there in green. We're gonna grant those to Drake as part of the deal. We will take credit for the incentives of granting it to them, but we will grant it to them because it's already owned. City is gonna buy the Bouillet property for $900,000. We will grant that to Drake also. Then we're going to grant the cost of purchasing the shell, which again is $3 million plus 1.8 to buy that lease out. And the reason that we're doing this different than granting it to Drake is we do not want to be caught in the chain of ownership of a gas station, because there needs to be remediation. You're gonna need KDHE clearances. So it was important that we did not assume the liability of purchasing that gas station. They will purchase and we will provide what we're calling an economic development grant to pay for that property. And we'll talk about what all happens in a couple slides in terms of if things start to go haywire with the remediation of that. And then Drake's also gonna buy the Chipotle, and the city's gonna reimburse them $1.5 million of their purchase cost of that Chipotle. At the completion of those two closings, Drake will own the west block, city will own the east block. Any questions about that? I'll pause right now. Any questions at all?
Mr. Green? I had one on the contributions that Drake's gonna make in terms of the member of the chamber and contributing to other various entities. How does that pair with the development agreement we have on the south side? Is it years? Is it in addition to?
It's in addition. Yeah, it's totally different. Those are two different agreements. Those are two different. So
it's not just Drake, it's Merriam Grand Station and.
Merriam Grand Station has that in there. So I'm using Drake. This is Slater Investors. On the other side, it's Merriam Grand X. So these are two different LLCs, two different agreements, both represented by Drake.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. It's not just Drake, it's each one is a separate.
Yes, sir.
And then what's the timeline for the Caribou?
Caribou will close,
Like as soon as we close, like how long until it's?
my understanding is they have till the end of the month. They've already been given the end of July, mid-July.
But they're well aware of everything that.
Yes, I believe that they were served, appropriate notice.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so regarding those cost maximums on site prep on the east side, what happens if, we exceed that cost? Who pays? And then you mentioned, great, and then you mentioned that some work has already been progressing. How does that compare with the, like, budgeted amounts?
I would let him answer that and get that, but I think all indications are that these are nice conservative numbers everyone is comfortable with.
Great.
I was gonna hold my questions again, but we already started a flurry. If the contractual agreements and the financial milestones, are agreed upon, we move forward with this, and then Drake decides at some point to sell this property to a different owner, all of those go contractually to
Be conveyed to the.
Thank you.
So now that we've had our closing activities and everybody is where they need to be in terms of property ownership, post-closing activities, so within 1 week of closing the east block, which again is east of Slater, Drake's gonna start the remaining demo site work. Again, it's already started, the properties that we have are already starting to come down. And then when that's complete, they're gonna move into construction of the grocery store. So again, that starts within 1 week. Within 1 week of west block closing, Drake's gonna start demo and site work on the west block, except for the shell, because there's some remediation issues that they've got to address over there, which they'll be able to, but they're just not gonna happen immediately. And then there's the Chipotle, which is going to remain. Again, as a reminder, Chipotle is the only thing that remains. Everything else will be replaced. Once the shell is vacated, Drake's gonna begin the environmental remediation of that site. Again, these are all spelled out within the RDA. These are hardwired to the contract. So the last thing I want to talk about the RDA, the bulk of the RDA is the city's reversionary right. So this is on the west block because there's issues with the shell. We call this internally. I don't want to disparage my friends over in Michigan. This is the gateway clause. So we have a city reversionary right on the west block. So the shell, the Boulier property, and the library properties on the west block become city-owned if any of these occur. So if Drake fails to start demolition on Boulier Library within 90 days of the west block closing, those properties become city property. If Drake fails to start demo on the shell within 180 days of west block closing, those properties become city property. If Drake fails to start the parking structure within the later of 180 days of clearance from KDHE, or 60 days from the city providing permits to proceed, those properties become city property. Drake fails to start residential within 1 year of starting the parking structure, those properties become city properties. If they don't get a certificate of occupancy on the residential within 5 years of west block closing, which is 7/17, those properties become city properties. We certainly don't want them back. We want them to be what they're supposed to be, just as they do. But it was important that we don't get stuck in a situation where something occurs with the remediation of that site, or we get halfway through, or something occurs, and we have to spend the next 15 years answering questions we don't have answers for. If you will recall, one of the things we talked about why we wanted to buy the library, why we wanted to own property, is so that we could control our destiny. These are the type of things that allow us to make sure that the things that we want to occur, us and the developer, occur. But if something were to occur in the smallest of chances that any one of these happen, we will control our destiny. Now, I might have to come back to you and say, hey, we have a half-built apartment out there, we need to figure out who it's going to, but we will be able to finish it because we will have control over it. So it was absolutely important to all of us that this get in here. So we're very happy that this is in here because it essentially says, this stuff's all gonna get done. We know it's gonna get done. Look at the south block, year and a half ahead of schedule, but that's why we have these things, because sometimes crazy stuff happens. So this is the city's reversionary right that is in there. From a development summary, again, $102 million budget that we're working with, 12,500 square foot grocery space on the east block, 4,000 square foot of restaurant space, restaurant retail. Again, there's no drive-throughs. You'll have about 215 residential Class A apartments that have 8.5%, where we got the 18 affordable for the first 5 years. 300 parking stalls, below and above grade parking structure, as well as 18 EV charging stations, and we're gonna keep that Chipotle there. That is our development, that is the nuts and bolts of the redevelopment agreement. Any questions before I jump into the exhibits of the redevelopment agreement, the 3 controlling documents that will come after approval if that occurs?
I just have one quick one that I think I know the answer to, but I want to share it on the record. The reversionary rights, those are things that we can be flexible with, like, in the event of an active fire.
And we would be very flexible.
But they are options if we need them.
Absolutely, absolutely. They wanna build a residential, we want them to build a residential, we don't wanna build a residential, and we don't, I think we all want the exact same thing, so we will, as we do in all agreements and opportunities with anyone, we do as much as we can to make people successful.
We aren't gonna let it sit.
We are not gonna let
some
it,
sites have
yes,
this.
yes, we will not let it sit, but they're not gonna let it sit.
Yeah, agreed.
Right, so again, this is something that I'm confident saying that 99.9%, we're never gonna look at that again, but on that 0.001% chance it happens, it's gonna be nice if it happens, right? So, yeah, great questions. So I'll jump into the controlling documents. These are the 3 documents that are that are attached as exhibits. It's super convenient that we are doing this, and the partner that we have actually in-house offers these services, so that's why we have these as attachments to the agreement we have. So we've got a construction management agreement, which is for construction of the site. We've got a commission agreement, which is also called a leasing agreement, which is who's gonna lease this. It's like a brokerage agreement. Property management agreement is management of the site once it's open and operating. So those 3 agreements. The construction management agreement, it's also referred to as a fee development and construction management agreement, covers development and construction management services. I'll jump into these a little bit, but development services and construction management services are the 2 kind of phases that they have in here that they're providing service for. Development services, you've got phase 1, 2, and 7. So you've got the pre-design phase, which is plan creation, plan review. You've got the project cost documentation, and this is required for the incentive reimbursement, both for them and for us. So we have had meetings with them and how they segregate costs, how they track their budget, so we can get comfortable with it, how we can, with their budgeting software, how it dovetails with our invoicing process and all of that to make sure that this will operate seamlessly, because it's important that it does. Then we have at the completion, what we would call development services, is the project completion phase. That's the delivery of the tenant, or delivery to the tenant, certification of occupancy, and then the as-bills and the warranties that'll go to the city. Those are the development services. Then there's also the construction management services. Those are pretty self-explanatory. You've got the document review and plan submittal. You've got the contract preparation, which includes the bid process, construction phase, which is exactly what it sounds like. Then you've got the closeout, which is at the end, where they essentially hand over the documents. We do a walkthrough, you get the final payment, and this is pretty much how we close the project out and say it's done. It can be turned over to the tenant. There's 3 fees associated with this contract. We've got a real estate advisor fee. A lot of this is for work for them helping us find tenants within the construction already to help set the budget. So we've got $60,000 on the 1-month anniversary of the certificate of occupancy. Then there's $125,000 on the 1-month anniversary of grocery opening to the public. There's development services. This is kind of the development cost that you see. That's $265,000. That's $90,000 on that 1-month anniversary of certificate of occupancy, and $175,000 on the 1-month anniversary of grocery opening. And then we've got a construction management fee that's a flat $190,000, and that's paid monthly, prorated on the actual amount of construction that has occurred at that point in time. The second agreement we have is a commission agreement, or it's also a leasing agreement, or a brokerage agreement. So that's a contract between the property owner, who would be us, and a broker. It outlines the terms of the compensation for locating us tenants. The grocery tenant will, they will have a grocery tenant for us no later than September 30th, 2025. Restaurant retail by 12/31/2025. Pay 6%, just like when you buy your house, 3% goes to one agent, 3% goes to the other. This is standard based on our check of the market. You will pay half within 30 days of execution of the agreement, half upon tenant opening. In the city, and the city, once the city receives the first month's rent. The last agreement that's on the exhibits is our property management agreement. This is once it's open and operating, they will manage property management and financial management of the property. It's the day-to-day operations. From a property management standpoint, they're gonna operate as an independent contractor. They are not related to the city. They are someone that we have hired to manage a piece of property that we have. They'll be responsible for maintenance, again, day-to-day, landscaping, snow removal, all of the things that go with taking care of a building on the city's behalf. Including rent collection. They're gonna be responsible for the fiscal management of it. Well, we will pay for things and we are ultimately the ones that sign off on the expenditures. They will prepare an annual budget for us on what they believe it's gonna take to push snow, to plant, to do all the things to manage that. And then they're gonna maintain the accounting records, create monthly reports, and prepare checks, because there will be checks to pay for those folks on our behalf. The management fees, the greater of $500 a month or 4% of gross monthly operating income, that's a standard rate. We went out to other developers to see the speed stack up, that measures it as standard. Then the terms initial is a 5-year term, then it will auto renew for additional 1-year terms. Those are, I believe, our 3 agreements. So that is it for the RDA. That's it for the redevelopment agreement and the exhibits. This is the budget again, $69 million, 69.4 in private investment, $32.6 million in public investment. How are we proposing to fund this project? As you can see there, the city's gonna borrow these funds. Before I have Jeff White from Columbia Capital come up here and turn it over to him to talk about issuance of bonds, I'm happy to answer any questions about the redevelopment agreement or the exhibit documents.
Questions, Mr. Freeman? Good. I see no questions. Mr. White, come forward.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Jeff White with Columbia Capital. It's our honor to serve as the city's financial advisor. Caitlin made me promise to keep the bond presentation to 80 or 90 slides, so we'll keep this down. So first, you've heard a lot of conversation over the last 45 minutes about $102 million being spent in these 2 blocks, and that's going to occur over the next 3-ish years. The challenge is that we are paying for a number of those improvements using dollars that won't accumulate, in the case of the CID, for as long as 22 years. And so to get from the need to have dollars to fund this project and all these project costs over the next few years, to dollars that won't come into the city's treasury for a generation from now, we need to bridge the receipt of those dollars, and we talk about public-private partnership. This is not always the case, but here it made sense for the city to leverage its AAA bond rating. Congratulations, that's been affirmed by Standard & Poor's, the highest rating available. And I will note on a later slide, actually higher than the US federal government at this point, since they just got downgraded, their last one. So we will be using 2 series of bonds, general obligation bonds issued by the city. And if the council were to approve all 13 items tonight, we plan to be in the market a week from tomorrow to sell these 2 series of bonds. So you approved or considered an item last week that talked about up to about $41 million of bonds to be issued. I won't get into a lot of details about why we sort of have to overshoot. It has to do with state law and the way that the Attorney General's office sort of interprets the kinds of things that we talk about as a maximum. So I'm giving you numbers here. If we had issued these bonds on June 10th, our best estimate would be that we'd actually need to borrow about $36 million. And you can see how that breaks down, about $22 million in tax exempt bonds, about $14 million in taxable bonds, And you can see the estimated effective rate of borrowing that we would expect to have gotten on those days. One huge caveat, we don't expect the total borrowing need to materially change. It could change a little bit based upon the way that bidders bid on these bonds next week. But we know what we need to borrow to fund the project, and that's not going to change over the next week. But what could change is interest rates, probably will change. And again, market conditions could impact that sizing a little bit. So keep your fingers crossed that warm breezes continue to blow, and we have good markets when we bonds out to bid. So when the city does issue general obligation bonds, it is making a promise to the bondholders that it will use all available sources of funds, including property tax dollars, in order to pay those principal and interest payments in full and on time. That is a risk to the city, and so we have done everything that we possibly can to try to mitigate the risk to the city's general fund and taxing base in order to ensure that we're using dollars generated by the project to repay these bonds, 100% of those costs. So the first thing is, Chris mentioned it just a bit ago, is we're giving ourselves the right on both the series of bonds, but particularly the larger tax-exempt bonds, to prepay these bonds early. And so we can take advantage of the continued strong performance in that TIF fund, for instance, to repay the bonds as they come in. We have cost savings that come to the city on our side, and the East Block costs, where we're not spending up to that full budget amount like we talked about. We can use those excess dollars to buy the bonds down early. We do expect, even though the bonds have a final maturity date, the tax-exempt bonds have a final maturity date 15 years from now, that we would redeem all those bonds by the end of that 2037 expected end date for the TIF. The taxable bonds are going to be largely paid with proceeds of the community improvement district sales tax and with rents on the grocery store and the restaurant/retail. And because of strange quirks of federal tax law, we structure those a little bit differently. We need to structure the debt service on those bonds to soak up all of those expected dollars each year. And so we do expect those bonds to remain outstanding for most, if not all, of that 22-year period. Just a reminder again that the developer has committed to guarantee $5 million of those CID receipts over time. So a material portion of the debt that's outstanding. So interestingly enough, we've got, again, roughly $36 million of bonds that'll be offered a week from now. How are we gonna offer these? We're gonna offer these the same way that you all buy dump trucks or snow plows. I guess I was here for a meeting not too long ago when you approved the purchase of snow plows, which are surprisingly expensive. We're gonna do this the same way. So we expect, again, with approval tonight, to put out to the market tomorrow an invitation to any registered broker-dealer in the United States to show up a week from tomorrow and to place a bid for these bonds. The bids are sealed, so we provide a set of bid specifications. We call those a notice of sale in our world. And it says, hey y'all, show up next Tuesday, 9:30 in the morning. We have bonds to sell. Here's how they'll be structured. Here's the terms and conditions. Here's the final maturity. And if you're interested in bidding, thankfully it's all electronic these days. You log into an electronic bidding site. You tell us what rates you're willing to pay on the bonds, what you're willing to purchase them for. At the closing time, 9:30, whatever that is, that system tabulates all the bids and it tells us which of those bidders is providing the lowest cost bid to the city. It takes us a couple hours to sort of wrap up the paperwork. And then about a month hence, we'll actually close on those bonds, which means you get the funds in hand in exchange for giving those bonds to the investors with the promise to repay principal and interest over the time. So just as a reminder, I said this at the top, I'm gonna say it again, Chris has already said it a couple times. We fully expect that the repayment of both series of bonds will be made from proceeds of the development and surrounding developments in the communities. We do not expect the city to have to draw on general fund resources or property tax resources to pay a single dollar of principal and interest on these bonds. We've done everything that we can reasonably do to assure that that's the case. The world is not perfect, and things do go bump in the night. COVID does happen, global credit crises do happen, those kinds of things, but certainly with respect to TIF, the city has a long history with respect to the I-35 redevelopment funds, so we have a good sense of what historical revenues look like in those funds. The community improvement district, often we're talking about CIDs for projects that have not come out of the ground yet, and prospective retailers producing sales taxes. Here, that CID boundary, as you recall, includes the retailers on the south side of the street, most of them anyways. And a lot of those folks are already open for business and selling beer and Middle Eastern food and all the other things that are going on across the street. And there are also, in many cases, names that Drake is familiar with because they located them in their other projects. And so we've relied heavily on Drake to help us put together the sales tax projections for that CID. Grocery events, as Matt mentioned in his presentation, we've got Drake has a completed lease with a grocery tenant. We know what those rents look like. So presuming that company stays in business for a long period of time, we can reasonably project what those looks like. The biggest bogey for us in my mind is, and I talked about this, I think the last time you saw me, was the restaurant and retail rents. We don't have a tenant yet. We don't know who's gonna go in there. We don't know when they will go in there. And so those rents are the ones that are probably the most flexible, I guess, at this point. And so just to close out, the last statement here again, the city, at the end of the day, is putting its financial backing behind repayment of these bonds. But we do not expect, beyond the revenues associated with this project, that they would ever have to draw on those in order to repay those. Mr. Mayor, happy to try to answer any questions.
Mr. White, is there any questions for Mr. White? Okay.
Thank you.
You've done a great job. We're almost there. Here to wrap up the last topic that we have before we start the public hearing, and that is to share with you the information relative to the Community Improvement District, which will be your second public hearing item once we get to that point of the meeting. So, Community Improvement District, as proposed, covers both the majority of the north and the south block retail, except for what's inside of the red lines, the dark red lines. So you have the orange lines, that is the boundaries of the CID. What's within the red lines is exempted from the CID. I will, because I will be asked, because I've been asked before, I will address the southern block two restaurants that are there. You've got the donut store and you've got the burger place. That is also the art of the deal. That is similar to the Independence property. The individual that owns those properties owns a piece of property within the development that we need to pull this development off. And we had to exempt those properties out of the CID. It is what it is. So I can't say it any clearer than that, but it's an illustration of how difficult it is to pull these deals off, and that there are things that just are outside of your control if you want to make it happen. So did want to call those up. I also want to address, and I think I do in a future slide, but I want to do what we're looking at here, that it was important to the council that we carve out the grocery store. It was very, very important to the council when we approved our CID policy late last year, and when we talked about this earlier this year, that we did not bring a grocery store in and then overlay the CID on top of the grocery store. We did not want to increase the cost of groceries within our community. I applaud you for that. As a result, there's a lot of sales that we don't generate the 1% on, but it was important to the council that we not increase the cost of groceries, which is hence the 22-year CID is required to generate the amount of money we need to offset the bonds. But you do have the Chipotle, the new restaurants, the Cava, Starbucks, Jersey Mike's, Treats Unleashed, Supplement Superstore, 30 Hop, Homegrown, Shake Shack, and Denny's, all will fall within the proposed CID should council choose to move forward with it. The residential will be exempted from it. The grocery store proposed, 12,500 square foot grocery store will be exempted, and the 2 restaurants at the northwest corner of Merriam Grand Station will be exempted. So what is a community improvement district? It's allowable per Kansas statute. It's an additional sales tax at the point of sale within the district, and it reimburses for a variety of things. TIF is pretty much restricted to infrastructure, parking structures, things that kind of go below grade. CID you can use for anything. It's a Swiss Army knife of incentives, if you will. CID's pay as you go, so essentially that additional sales tax is collected, as Mr. White had shared at the point of sale. It doesn't accrue for a while, but as it accrues, we will keep it in its own account, and those proceeds will go to pay off some of the debt. Only funds that are currently available can be pledged. That's what pay as you go. If we don't have it, it can't go. So here's just an illustration of how it would work. So you've got a merchant that's located within the CID. At the point of sale, you'll have 2 likely extra lines. You'll have one extra line. You'll have the sales tax, which is 9.475 in Merriam. Then statutorily, you can have up to 2% of additional CID. This is a proposal for only 1%. It's also, per your CID policy, has to be inconspicuously noticed in all of those retailers within the CID that the CID exists, so people aren't surprised up at the counter. They will know prior to the sale. So the regular sales tax at 9.475, that flows to the places that it flows now, which is 6.3 goes to the state, 1.475 goes to Johnson County, 1.5 goes to the city, as our normal sales tax distribution occurs. The additional 1% in our case will go to reimburse allowable expenses. The allowable expenses in this case would be to pay off the debt that we are proposing. So the uses, we're gonna use it pay as you go, the 1% CID, not on groceries, that's 50 cents on a $50 receipt. You can go into Cava, order your dinner, it's $50, it's an extra 50 cents that will be put on that receipt. All those CID sales tax will go to the benefit of the city. They do not go to the developer. We anticipate using the CID, well, I said that, repay debt. Collections will begin on October 1st, 2025. Again, here is your map of your CID properties. I am happy to answer any questions. Actually, if you have any questions about the CID, if you don't, that is the end of our presentation of the Merriam Grand Marketplace project. We're happy to answer any questions you have before the public hearing, because it's about that time. As a reminder, before you ask any questions, we will roll into the public hearing. We have 2 public hearings. We'll have public hearing number 1 on TIF project plan O. The mayor will open up the project. The mayor will open up the public hearing. We will take comment from the public. Then we will close that first public hearing. We will open the second one. That is on the establishment of the CID district. We will take comment from the public. We will close that one. We will answer questions that you may have of any of us. Again, public comment is comment, it's not conversation. So we will try to keep track of if there's questions we think council might ask after the fact. But I would make sure that it's just clear that this is the only opportunity for residents that have comment need to be during one of these 2 public comments. There will not be any other public comment opportunity during this meeting. Happy to answer any questions. We would be happy to answer any questions before you roll into public hearing.
Appreciate it. Go ahead, Ms. Lay.
I just had one comment. I just wanted about the contributions from the developer and the ownership group. I think I commend staff for helping set those up on Merriam Grand Station. I'm very thankful for Drake for your contributions for that. Talking with the chamber, they really appreciate it as well. It's been groundbreaking in the area, and other cities are starting to adopt it as well as part of their redevelopment agreements. So very big kudos to the staff for setting that up and continuing to move that forward. I think it's been great for our community and to see it trickle out into the surrounding communities as well.
Any questions from Mr. Ingram? No questions this time? Okay. I guess, well, at this point, I assume we're ready to open up the public, portion of this public hearing. Okay, I will open up the public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to come forward and speak to? The first public item will be on, project O, as was, I depicted this out. No one wants to go forward this time? One. Nobody come forward on the first one. Because I'll close out that first, meeting. Okay, so I guess I'll just open up the second public hearing. Does anyone would like to speak to the CID? Open up the second public hearing, this public meeting. Anyone in the audience would like to come forward this time and speak about the CID proposal as was just discussed? Please come forward, sir. Give your name and address for the record.
Of course, Billy Crown, 6633 West Street. Corporate welfare killed Hen House. When this city's deal ran out, the rents went up and so did Hen House leave. Some of you are new on council to remember that, but Bob should recall, he was around at the time. And it's disappointing that we're getting ready to do the same thing again. Corporate welfare to get a grocery store and end up losing it. No less than 3 types of corporate welfare are being sought today. TIF will take money away and continue to take money away from our school districts, our county, our state, our libraries, and our county parks. IRB will wash a sales tax off of construction costs in this center. And I'll give Stacy a second to, thank you. Oh, excellent, thank you. And CID will add sales tax to our city. I'm not in favor of new sales tax. I still remember in 2017 when we had a mere $24 million of debt and a 0.25% sales tax, and that went up to a public vote. Let's see, now $40 million of debt and a full whole percent of sales tax for wealthy private businesses is for discussion. Matt Pennington focuses on the most premier tenants in the country. I wrote that down earlier, and I think that my Merriam neighbors are pretty premier already. And I hope you all agree with that. The city is planning to be the landlord of a grocery store for a few years, and then put it up to a commercial landlord, as I've heard in previous meetings. When we do that, and the rent goes up, we'll be right back where we started, with millions in debt. My neighbors deserve a public vote. Before $40 million of debt, we had one in 2017. I would ask that we allow the public to vote on this as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Does anyone else have anything that would like to report before I close out that public hearing? Anyone else please come forward? All right, having said that, I'll close out the CID public hearing. So Reverend String will come to the podium, assuming he's going to ask us if we have any questions for him.
Your assumption is correct, Mayor. My slide says final questions before the votes. I would just simply say that we, from a staff perspective, and I think I speak for most of the council, that we feel like this is what our residents want. We've asked our residents on multiple occasions. We hear all the time that they'd like us to have a grocery store. I think that this is something that we should all be really excited about the opportunity for, if it makes sense to the council. So, past that, I'm happy to answer any of the questions.
Does the council have any additional questions? Go ahead, Mr. President.
Yeah, I just have a sort of a comment. I think that it seems like you guys have done a really good job making sure to protect Merriam's, investment and stake in the project, with, dodging ownership of the gas station, which I think is a good idea. The gateway clause, is, again, we can just let them.
We don't officially call it.
Well, sure. But, potentially, avoiding, some sort of half-finished, thing for multiple, decades. And then, I think the ownership of the grocery store, building is a really interesting idea and a way to dodge, potentially the very same issue that did cause Hen House from, leaving our community.
Thank you. Any other questions? Go ahead, Ms. Lane.
I just have one question, because I know the poll that we did for the city talks about, multi-million-dollar investment or a way to attract a grocery store. Can you talk just like at a high level about, it's not just a gift to bring a grocery store, it is an investment that we expect some level of return on.
Absolutely, great question, happy to answer that. It is an investment. We make investments of tax dollars all the time for a return, whether that's in our own infrastructure or that is other instruments that create interest for us. By taking control of the East Block, we are actually creating a sales tax stream, we are creating a future property tax stream, we are creating an equity that we can cash in at some point in time and sell to someone else down the road, just like we could any of our other investments. So I think, my honest opinion is that if we're not willing to invest in our own community, why should anyone else? Does that answer your question? More of a statement, but.
Yeah, no, I just wanna make sure that, like, some of us are aware, but make sure everybody's aware, it's not just $30 million gift, it's, we expect a return on
We
investment.
have something, yes,
Yeah.
yes, we, instead of, many development deals, you're providing an incentive to the developer that the developer's gonna cash in on somewhere down the road. You get the development in return and they take risks, so there's a good transaction. What makes this one different is we actually own the asset, this asset will accrue. If we continue to invest in our community, if we continue to invest in that corridor, we control, because it's property, we control how much value we can potentially extract out of that, to the benefit of our residents, right? I mean, these revenue streams that we create are to help control property tax. That's ultimately what all these revenue streams help us do.
Perfect, thank you.
Other questions, Mr. Ingram?
Yeah.
Mr. Collins?
This is more of a comment. Through the years, I've been very vocal about my dislike of CID, and as we talked, I don't like this one, but I'm gonna vote for it, because last year when we came up with our CID plan, it stated that if it was transitional, had to be transitional to the city. And this development is very transitional to the city. And so to the next developer that comes, if you can bring us another one, you might even get my vote on a CID like you will tonight.
Other questions for Mr. Ingram? Okay, I'd also, I guess at this point, ask us any questions for Mr. Pennington or Mr. White. I mean, are we ready to go to vote? All right, yes, thank you, Mr. Ingram.
I'm just gonna, can you do the slides or die? So I'm just gonna stand up here, pretend I'm not here, I'm just gonna put the votes up right here as the council does their thing.
Okay, so the first item, we'll wait till Mr. Pennington gets up there, is, as you can see from vote one, will be to adopt the project plan for project area O. Staff's recommending that we waive the first reading of this ordinance. I would accept a motion to waive that first reading. Go ahead, Ms. Sanders.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the governing body waive the customary first reading of an ordinance adopting the project plan for project area O.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second? Go ahead, Ms. Shredder.
Mr. Ray, second.
Okay, we have a motion, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Shveta.
Aye.
Councilmember Kozmeyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Hans.
Aye.
Councilmember Caldwell.
Aye.
Councilmember Leahy.
Aye.
Councilmember Ryder.
Aye.
Councilmember Silvers.
Aye.
Councilmember Godrich.
Aye.
Mayor Pape.
Aye.
Motion passes 9-0.
Okay, now do I have a motion to approve an ordinance adopting the project plan for project area O? By state statute, approving this ordinance, adopting the project plan for project area O requires 2/3 approval of the governing body, which would include myself. Motion, go ahead, Ms. Sanders.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the governing body approve an ordinance adopting the Shawnee Mission Parkway, IKEA Way, West 62nd Terrace, and Antioch redevelopment project plan, project area O, and authorize the mayor to sign the effectuating ordinance.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second? Mr. Silvers.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to second that.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, we have a motion second.
Councilmember Kozmeyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Hans.
Aye.
Councilmember Caldwell.
Aye.
Councilmember Leahy.
Aye.
Councilmember Ryder.
Aye.
Councilmember Silvers.
Aye.
Councilmember Yadrich.
Aye.
Councilmember Shavetta.
Aye.
Mayor Pate.
Aye.
Motion passes 9-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. It looks like the next item up would be vote number 3, which is this next item on the agenda is to approve a redevelopment agreement with Drake Development. A motion for that. Go ahead, Judge.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the council approve a redevelopment agreement between the City of Merriam and Slater Investors LLC, which grants certain incentives relating to the Merriam Grand Station Marketplace development, including the approval of all exhibits attached to the redevelopment agreement, which are either in final or substantially final form, and for those in substantially final form, approve the finalizations of such documents by the city administrator on behalf of the city council.
Do I have a motion? Do I have a second? Go ahead, Ms. Hand.
I'll second that.
Okay, Madam Clerk, we have a motion second.
Councilmember Hands.
Aye.
Councilmember Caldwell.
Aye.
Councilmember Leahy.
Aye.
Councilmember Ryder.
Aye.
Councilmember Silvers.
Aye.
Councilmember Yadrich.
Aye.
Councilmember Shavetta.
Aye.
Councilmember Cosmeyer.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And the next item up would be, the agenda is to adopt an ordinance establishing a community improvement district. Staff is recommending that we waive the first reading of this ordinance. Will require a 2/3 governing vote. I accept a motion for that. Okay, go ahead, Ms. Yadrich.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the governing body waive the customary reading of an ordinance establishing the Merriam North Community Improvement District.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second? Ms. Hand.
I second that.
Okay, Madam Clerk, we have a motion second.
Councilmember Caldwell.
Aye.
Councilmember Leahy.
Aye.
Councilmember Ryder.
Aye.
Councilmember Silvers.
Aye.
Councilmember Yadrich.
Aye.
Councilmember Shavetta.
Aye.
Councilmember Cosmeyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Hands.
Aye.
Mayor Pate.
Aye.
Motion passes 9-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next item would be, now I have a motion to adopt the ordinance establishing the community improvement district. Go ahead, Ms. Yadrich.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the council approve an ordinance establishing the Merriam North Community Improvement District and set forth the boundaries thereof. Authorize a community improvement district project relating thereto, approve the estimated cost of such community improvement district project, and approve the method of financing the same, all in accordance with Kansas statutes.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Coach Leahy.
Second that motion.
We have a motion second, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Leahy.
Aye.
Councilmember Ryder.
Aye.
Councilmember Silvers.
Aye.
Councilmember Yadrich.
Aye.
Councilmember Shavetta.
Aye.
Councilmember Cosmeyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Hands.
Aye.
Councilmember Caldwell.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next item on the agenda is to adopt 2 bond ordinances and 2 accompanying parameters of the resolutions. Staff's recommending to waive the first reading of both ordinances. Entertain a motion for that, Ms. Yadrich.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the governing body waive the customary first reading of an ordinance authoring the issuance of general obligation bonds series 2025A in an amount not to exceed $25,100,000.
Yeah, we have a motion. We have a second. Go ahead, Ms. Ryder.
Mr. Mayor, I second.
Madam Clerk, we have a motion second.
Councilmember Ryder.
Aye.
Councilmember Silvers.
Aye.
Councilmember Yadrich.
Aye.
Councilmember Shavetta.
Aye.
Councilmember Cosmeyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Hands.
Aye.
Councilmember Caldwell.
Aye.
Councilmember Leahy.
Aye.
Mayor Pate.
Aye.
Motion passes 9-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Looks like the next vote will be the first ordinance just to authorize the issuance of general obligation bonds series 2025A, tax exempt in an amount not to exceed $25,100,000. Staff's recommending waiving of that first reading. We'll require a 2/3 vote. Ms. Yadrich.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the council approve an ordinance authoring the issuance of general obligation bonds, Series 2025A, in an amount not to exceed $25,100,000, providing for the levy and collection of an annual tax for the purpose of providing for the payment of the principal amount of and interest on the bonds as it becomes due and payable, and making certain other covenants and agreements with respect to the bonds.
We have a motion, do I have a second? Go ahead, Mr. President.
Mr. Mayor, and second.
Okay, Madam Clerk, we have a motion, second.
Councilmember Silvers,
Aye.
Councilmember Yarbridge,
Aye.
Councilmember Shavetta,
Aye.
Councilmember Cosmeyer,
Aye.
Councilmember Hands,
Aye.
Councilmember Caldwell,
Aye.
Councilmember Leahy,
Aye.
Councilmember Ryder.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now do I have a motion to adopt that bond ordinance? Jim Shepherd. Oh, it's okay.
The next waiving.
Oh, I've got to check that out, sorry. I wasn't checking quickly. Thank you. The second is to adopt a bond ordinance authorizing the issuance of a general obligation bond, Series 2025B, taxable in an amount not to exceed $15,785,000. Staff's recommending waiving of the first reading. Go ahead, Ms. Sanders.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the governing body waive the customary first reading of an ordinance authoring the issuance of general obligation bonds, Series 2025B, in an amount not to exceed $15,785,000.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Go ahead, Ms. Haynes.
I'll second that.
Okay, Madam Clerk, we have a motion, second.
Councilmember Yarbridge,
Aye.
Councilmember Shavetta,
Aye.
Councilmember Cosmeyer,
Aye.
Councilmember Hands,
Aye.
Councilmember Caldwell,
Aye.
Councilmember Leahy,
Aye.
Councilmember Ryder,
Aye.
Councilmember Silvers,
Aye.
Mayor Pate.
Aye.
Motion passes 9-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now do I have a motion to adopt the bond ordinance? Ms. Sanders.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the council approve an ordinance authoring and providing for the issuance and delivery of taxable general obligation bonds, Series 2025B, in an amount not to exceed $15,785,000, providing for the levy and collection of an annual tax for the purpose of providing for the payment of the principal amount of and interest on the bonds as it becomes due and payable, and making other certain covenants and agreements with respect to the bonds.
Do I have a second? Go ahead, Ms. Schmidt.
Mr. Mayor, second.
Okay, Madam Clerk, we have a motion, second.
Councilmember Shavetta,
Aye.
Councilmember Cosmeyer,
Aye.
Councilmember Hands,
Aye.
Councilmember Caldwell,
Aye.
Councilmember Leahy,
Aye.
Councilmember Ryder,
Aye.
Councilmember Silvers,
Aye.
Councilmember Yarbridge.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next is the associated parameters resolutions. The first is parameters resolution authorizing general obligation bond series 2025A tax exempt in support of the Merriam Grand Station Marketplace project. Accept the motion for that. Chambers.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the council approve a parameters resolution authorizing the sale, prescribing the form and details, and authorizing the delivery of general obligation bonds, Series 2025A of the city of Merriam, Kansas, in the principal amount not to exceed $25,100,000, previously authored by an ordinance of the city.
We have a motion to accept a second. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I'll second that.
Okay, Ms. Haynes, okay. Okay, we have a motion, second, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Cosmeyer,
Aye.
Councilmember Hands,
Aye.
Councilmember Caldwell,
Aye.
Councilmember Leahy,
Aye.
Councilmember Ryder,
Aye.
Councilmember Silvers,
Aye.
Councilmember Yarbridge,
Aye.
Councilmember Shavetta.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The next vote is, the second is a parameters resolution authorizing general obligation bond series 2025B taxable in support of the Merriam Grand Station Market Project. Accept the motion. Chambers.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the council approve parameters resolution authorizing the sale, prescribing the form and details, and authorizing the delivery of general obligation bonds, Series 2025B of the city of Merriam, Kansas, and the principal amount not to exceed $15,785,000 previously authorized by an ordinance of the city.
Do I have a second? Mr. Silvers?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to second that.
Okay, Madam Clerk, we have a motion second.
Councilmember Hans,
Aye.
Councilmember Caldwell,
Aye.
Councilmember Leahy,
Aye.
Councilmember Ryder,
Aye.
Councilmember Silvers,
Aye.
Councilmember Yodrich,
Aye.
Councilmember Shavetta,
Aye.
Councilmember Kozmeyer.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Madam Clerk, next item up on the agenda is to concur with Planning Commission's recommendation to approve the rezoning preliminary development plan. So I will accept the motion for that. Ms. Shepard?
Mr. Mayor, I move that the governing body concur with the Planning Commission's recommendation for approval with conditions of a request for rezoning of an area bounded by IKEA Way, West 62nd Terrace, Antioch Road, and Shawnee Mission Parkway, not including 8800 Shawnee Mission Parkway from CO District, C1 District, and PUDG District, with Planning Unit Development General to PUDG District with use restrictions and the associated preliminary development plan.
We have a motion? Second?
Second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Caldwell,
Aye.
Councilmember Leahy,
Aye.
Councilmember Ryder,
Aye.
Councilmember Silvers,
Aye.
Councilmember Yodrich,
Aye.
Councilmember Shavetta,
Aye.
Councilmember Kozmeyer,
Aye.
Councilmember Hans,
Aye.
Mayor Pate.
Aye.
Motion passes 9-0.
Okay. The final item of tonight's agenda is to accept the dedication of right-of-ways and easements via the plat. We'll accept the motion for that. Ms. Shepard?
Mr. Mayor, I move that the governing body accept the dedication of easements and right-of-way shown on the Grand Station Marketplace final plat.
Do we have a second? Mr. Leahy?
I second that motion.
Madam Clerk, we have a motion and a second.
Councilmember Leahy,
Aye.
Councilmember Ryder,
Aye.
Councilmember Silvers,
Aye.
Councilmember Yodrich,
Aye.
Councilmember Shavetta,
Aye.
Councilmember Kozmeyer,
Aye.
Councilmember Hans,
Aye.
Councilmember Caldwell,
Aye.
Mayor Pate.
Aye.
Motion passes 9-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Well, it's been an interesting time to see the end. I personally, I know that the council appreciates all the staff has done to put this project together. Mr. Bennington, and all your crew for doing that, and Mr. White and all your crew for making this happen this evening. It's pretty much the end of our agenda, but I understand, Director Dyer, that the proposal that the plans have been submitted for the grocery store project.
Yes, we have had a couple of building permit applications for that project. I think the one that folks would be most interested in are you all that sat all the way through this meeting. This is,
Well, I would entertain a motion to adjourn this evening. Oh, go through Ms. Yodrich.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adjourn.
And I'll second it.
And Ms. Hand seconds, Madam Clerk.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.
Yes. And you got to see her. Yeah.
Trader Joe's is a welcome surprise.
Yeah, what a surprise. That wasn't
I actually talked to a couple of weekends ago who said that it was going to be the Goggles. Not really a full grocery. Huh. But how cool.
I've never been.
What?
Never been a Trader Joe's.
No?
No?
It's pretty neat.
I think I went one in California, but not
They're actually like a sibling company to Aldi. But they have like nicer brands.
Yeah.
A little bit pricier. Not too much pricier.
Now I'm wondering, wow.
How did Trader Joe's come about?
Yeah.
A bunch of investors came up with a new brand name. I don't know. They do a cool thing where they, like the tags on the shelf, they're written by hand. They're in like paint pens. So it feels kind of more homey. So it feels more like a...
I just remember in California, I went into Trader Joe's looking for a particular bottle of wine.
Yeah?
Yeah.
They do sell wine, I'm pretty sure. I'm curious if they will have any limits in...
I've been over south.
I'm curious if they have any limits in Kansas, because I know for a while Kansas was really strict on what alcohol grocery stores could sell, and it's loosened up. I don't think it's completely like a... So...
My husband worked for a Standard. I looked at one time, and then he went to like distributor, and now it's Laser Farm now. They merged their Laser employees, and after 28 years, they said goodbye.
Well, what do you think of all the rest of the presentations? They definitely did hedge their bets. The Mission Gateway clause. That's cool.
Yeah. We don't want that happening.
I am totally. That would be in any Yeah. I don't understand how that's not going to happen this time. Because the city's going to be the landlord and the building, and then we're going to sell it to a commercial now. You don't think the rent's going to go up at that point?
No, I think it's going to be pretty well established, especially in this area.
I certainly hope so.
Yeah, and another area of Merriam, I think, is close in it.
Hope for the best.
Just knowing what I know, well, just the residents of my apartment, I talked to them, we have a very diverse group in there.
I looked up our languages in Merriam. It's English, Spanish, German, and then Vietnamese.
People with families, not too many. The ones with the kids are they kind of.
Ready, Netta?
All right. You guys have a nice night.
Nice talking to you.
Same here.
You need to drink water after all.
All right, I just got it. Yes. Yeah.
Wednesday call still. There's some work to do.
Jacob and I were talking about that, I think.
Yeah, just so we can, there's still things that need to be heard.
Yeah, wood shop.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of people. Hopefully. Probably next year. I think I probably got it.
Well, so when Henhouse has that closed, you got on like the Trader Joe's.
Right, I traded it at Portsmouth.
Web
Keep
people
stuff
that
around the
like,
basics,
sent
get
me
to
an
the
email, and was like, hey, you should move into Merriam. And I don't know.
You bet.
That might have been.
I sent him one of those too.
Yeah, I think that building's a little too big for them apparently.
The hen house building?
Yeah.
I'm surprised 12.5 is enough for them. It's less than their other stores.
Is it? What are the others at?
It's like 15 or 18, something like that.
Okay.
So, I mean, not like hugely more, but definitely it's gonna be on the smaller side.
Yeah, it's exciting.
But yeah, they can, I'm sure they can still do something good to the smaller store.
Yeah, yeah.
Correct for each piece, so if it
We're driving on that. Yeah, call me up. See you guys later.
Good meeting.
Yeah, we got through all 13 votes tonight.
That's, might be a record.
Yeah, it is for me.
3 of them got and I guess they transferred us. So within like the first couple of years, I had to take out all except for the giant alpha. It has like, really long beams. Oh, yeah. Now it's like tall and straight. It's only 18 feet. And then one day I was like slowly working and I had the door open and everything. And I don't think it was raining. Lightning hit and the whole shit. So I lost the temperature in my backyard. Yeah.
So we've been working on it, trying to assess how that.
Absolutely.
These shapes are so close.
I'm gonna walk out with you. It looks like my team all left.
They left you.
They don't care about me, I guess, I get it.
It was too late. I mean, they were already dying. I didn't realize it like when I bought the house. It was
All right, that was a special meeting for June 16th.